This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, I'm excited to share with you a fun new fantasy football format. It's called Surf Football. I'm thrilled to welcome its founder, Mike Neugebauer, to the show. Welcome in, my man.
Welcome. Nice to meet you, Kevin. It was nice to see you at the Expo a few months ago as well.
Yeah, it was great to meet you at the Expo. I'm excited to share everything you got going with Surf Football. Anything fresh in fantasy is fun, and it's fun to share it with others. So let's dive in. Please, can you tell the listeners and viewers what this game is? What is Surf Football?
Yeah, Surf Football. It's a free-to-play fantasy football league structure, a platform where people go in and play for free, 12-team leagues. And we've got 12 different game modes that you can explore, and it's probably actually a whole lot more than that, but that's kind of the starting point.
Sure. Now we're obviously going to dive into it. We're going to get into some good questions about this game so people can understand what it's about. Let's rewind a little bit first, though. Were you a big sports fan growing up?
A little bit, yeah. When I was young, I started to follow the Lakers. That was my first team that I got into as a sports fan. Wasn't really too athletic or anything. I love playing tennis, though. That's my favorite sport to play. And then as I got into high school and college, I started to awaken more to the NFL and kind of get in the groove with the NFL, and became a Saints fan in the 90s, and have been one ever since. Yeah, so that was I kind of gradually got into sports over the years. I was always big into music and games, more so when I was young, and then kind of the sports kind of caught up later.
Sure. Now it makes sense, just given the unique look and appearance that Surf Football has, that you might have some background with some gaming, some role playing games. Was that something that was a big part of your world back in the day?
Yeah, certainly. I was a big player of the Atari 2600. As Atari 2600 kid, got big time into that, and then the original Nintendo, and also on Apple II, and then going forward into the 90s, being a computer gaming nerd of all sorts.
So when along the way did you discover fantasy sports?
It was sometime in the middle of the 90s. I kind of heard a little bit about it here and there, and then I was on America Online, and then I got exposed to the Grandstand platform that was there, and I decided to give it a try. Just the concept of having my own team of different football players, it seemed like a really exciting way to watch and play football, and it seemed a lot like role playing. So I decided to jump right in and give it a shot. Yeah, and go ahead.
Yeah, sort of a natural fit for you. What was it at first that you did that hooked you with fantasy sports?
Definitely just the building my own team, setting my own lineups, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and kind of constructing it really similar to like a role-playing team. So that's kind of was a big part of it. Yeah.
Nice. Well, obviously being behind the brand of Surf Football and creating this game, what is the role? What is the need that this game is fulfilling for the fantasy world out there?
That's still kind of to be determined. I think I'm kind of feeling it out as I go. I have my ideas, but I think the community is going to drive that a lot. I do know that I want it to be mainly traditional fantasy football, not any of the sports betting or any of that, because there's plenty of competition in that space,
Sure.
And people are already doing amazing things with that. So I just want to add some flavor to traditional fantasy football. And like I said, keep it kind of free to play in the public space for now, until I kind of learn a little bit more about what other people are looking for in fantasy football. It's kind of a discovery process. I've been thinking lately, especially since the last month or so, it's like this truly is my rookie year with this product. And I'm like Michael Penix or somebody, I kind of bide my time learning from everybody else, and my time will come later, possibly, and I just want to soak in all I can.
I love it. So what is most fun about this game in this format?
The Surf Football format, I think the most fun thing is just having these different game modes that I've designed. Some are a little more conservative and closer to traditional fantasy football, and others are way out there and really have to make you think about the rules that are going on and have lots of scoring modifiers and things to consider when you're setting your lineups.
I love it. I love it. So how do you relate surf football to blackjack and bingo and fantasy role playing games? Like how does it all kind of work together?
With those that you cited in particular, all those have like a great element of luck with it. Like with role playing, in the original role playing as we knew it with Dungeons and Dragons, you're rolling dice. Obviously, blackjack it's cards, and in bingo that's pretty much all luck. So yeah, there's a lot of parallel between that and fantasy football, especially nowadays. It's just so volatile with which players are going to go off and which are going to completely tank. So there's a lot of luck involved. So I think combining those same principles, games that are kind of heavily luck based, kind of goes together well, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, can you tell us about the game modes? What makes them unique? Maybe share some details about the draft interface as well. I can go one by one on
Okay.
the game modes as well if you'd prefer.
Yeah. I think I'll probably touch on one or two game modes that are easier to explain and then leave the rest to the viewers to find out about.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the ones that are simpler to get into are the Barstool Bingo, where you compete against an opponent. You each have a bingo style card of different fantasy football objectives, and your fantasy football squad works to achieve those objectives. Like if your quarterback gets over 300 passing yards, you fill in a bingo square. If your kicker has 50-yard field goal, you fill in another square, and so on and so forth. And your objective is to have more squares filled in with your opponent. And the bingo comes in. You don't have to call the bingo, but you can still get a bingo line just like you would in traditional bingo, and that counts an extra point, is how it works. So yeah, there's that mode. Like I said, I don't want to get into all of them. One that I keep coming back to that I think people would be intrigued by is the unsung hero mode. The way that works is it's traditional fantasy football with the starting lineup, but with one catch. The highest scoring player that's sitting on your bench, 2/3 of his points count in with the rest of those starters. So if you have a wild week where you had some guy sitting on your bench that completely surprised you and had a great performance, you still get some of that contribution into your competition against your opponent. So I think it's kind of a good marriage between it's just blending in a little bit of the best ball theme with and giving somebody a little bit of recourse if they left a key performer out of their starting lineup.
I love that. No, yeah. How did you come up with these? Is just you sitting around and just come up with
Yeah.
unique formats?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I just sat around and came up with most of these on my own. Yeah, I would say pretty much all of them I just came up on my own. The one I would say is a little bit derivative is the Squid League, which is kind of named after the Squid Games TV show or TV series, but it's fairly similar to the Guillotine League that Paul Charchian runs. There is a big key difference though in that with the Squid League you have 6 weeks where your team is safe and you're collecting, you're stashing points, and then after that 6-week initial period, teams get eliminated one by one. I just wanted to try something a little different where you had that first initial 6 weeks boundary where you're not getting eliminated right at the start of the football season. So you have some time to build up your team.
Yeah, I like that because you have some time to also connect with the league and be involved in kind of be invested in the league as opposed to just starting week one and getting chopped and you're done. You're done.
Yeah.
Although, guillotine's a great format, but it's interesting. It's like kind of what you've described here is, unique formats in fantasy can be a lot of fun, and it's cool. Have you had a lot of interest? I mean, what's it been like for you with this new launch?
It's been pretty quiet so far. We've had some users that have tried it out. I've been getting some feedback from some of those users. Mainly, I could call out a few people like Jack Lucenay from the Worst Sports Show has gotten me some really good feedback. He's been a really good guy to get to know.
Oh, great.
and the guys at the TSA as well. The guys and gals at the TSA have been really super supportive too, and been fun to interact with. But yeah, I'm looking to grow my user base a little bit. As a matter of fact, kind of looking forward into next year, I may start to focus in on one of these game modes as my flagship mode of sorts, so I can try to really rope people into playing it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How about the draft process and the interface that you use? Like, how does that make this game unique?
I kind of wanted to kind of clear the slate and kind of, basically close my eyes and try to imagine, like what would, at least for me personally, what do I find that's difficult to use about other draft interfaces? What would I like to see done differently? That type of thing. The one thing that I did want to incorporate that I was pretty clear about was having like a serpentine interface where you see, because you always have the snake draft, the serpentine draft, where it flips each round. And I just wanted to give more of a visual indicator to the user when they're drafting that, hey, they're at the end of the first round. They're going to pick here soon again in the beginning of the second. But then you can visually see, okay, you've got a long way to go before it wraps around all the way back to your third round selection, that type of thing. So I just kind of wanted to put more visual cues out there for the user. Little things like maybe doing some coloring of the bye weeks too, so you can kind of try to easily make sure you're not colliding your bye weeks of your players that you're selecting, things like that. So I'm definitely, that's something I'm still looking for feedback on too. If there's other things I'm missing with the draft interface, always looking to improve with that.
I love it. I mean, I love the idea of building something fresh and modifying as you go and seeing what you learn with this process and growing it. And like you said, kind of in the beginning, you want to grow it in the direction that the consumers want. I love that. How about the free mini games you're offering? What are those about?
Yeah, those are something I kind of put in there at the end, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. So the one mini game, there's two of them. The one mini game is called Side Quests, and that is one where it's kind of a guessing game. I was kind of inspired by, like, sometimes in my family, like we go over to my dad's house still, and he always had like little guessing games for the kids, like put this, my stepmom would put all these peanuts or coins in a jar, and everybody in the family would try to guess how much are in there. That type, that little thing. I'm trying to bring a little bit of that flavor into surf football, where it's kind of a guessing game. So instead of that, you're picking, well, how many games do you think will go into overtime? Do you think there will be a tie game that occurs this week? And like how many field goals will be kicked and how many touchdowns will be scored? That type of thing. And you kind of just something that you could play against other people to see who has the highest score for the week, just as kind of a side game. And then the second one is called Sweet Spot, and that one is a little bit of it's a little bit like DFS. You just set like a mini lineup where it's a quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, one tight end, and then rather than trying to outscore everybody else, you're trying to hit a target. So I haven't looked to see, everything revolves on Tuesday, and so it rotated to a new point target this week, but let's say it's like 50 points. So you're trying to assemble the lineup that gets closest to 50 points. Whether it's just a little bit lower or higher,
That's cool.
Like, so you're trying to, you might want to pick like a crappy player that will even it out and get you close to 50 points or something like that. So,
that's fun.
Yeah.
It's like closest to the pin. I love it.
Yeah. There you go.
That's great. How about roster management? How is that made efficient in these games?
Yeah, with the roster management, I'm trying to make it, and it's still work in progress, but I want to make it visually very usable and easy to kind of run through and do quickly and spot, okay, where's my backup running back? Where's my player on a bye week? The guys I got to move around, So, and then actually, as it turns out, this kind of comes into play because the way I have Surf Football running now, I have like about 20 test users that to test the site and stuff. And actually, every Tuesday night, I come along and I basically set my lineups on all those teams of all those users. So it actually ends up being like 80 or 90 different teams. Okay. And I find on Tuesday night, I can fly through it in about 45 minutes or an hour. Managing all 90 of those different teams. So
amazing.
I try to that's kind of what I'm going for. Is I'm trying to make it easier for the user, hopefully, to manage their team any way possible, and always looking for feedback on that as well.
That's great. Now, talk about crowns and how they affect engagement and excitement around the games.
The crowns, they're a little bit like other video games you've probably played, where you earn achievements, surprise unlocks in whatever game you're playing. That's the same thing that's going on in surf football. So the crowns are basically, they're secret, but you earn them as you go, and then like you have some unusual circumstance, or something goes on, like maybe your tight end reaches some level and he plays for a certain team, or your two wide receivers accomplish something together, or they both score 0 points, or something really, something that's a little bit out of the ordinary. And then you have kind of a maybe a ironic or semi-humorous, memento from that event that occurs.
Nice. Now, how important is community in this game?
Very important. If you're talking about the surf football community, because I'm trying to build a community from scratch, and it's very much a grassroots thing. So I totally will need, people that will advocate for the game or recommend it to their friends, and start up leagues and things like that as we go forward. It's going to be instrumental. And like I said earlier, all the people that I met in the community proper are really fantastic to work with.
What's the target market? Like who's the ideal candidate for a game like this?
It depends on the game mode and kind of what you're looking for. So it's kind of hard to guess at. I would definitely say it's probably, anybody that's kind of looking to play something a little different, and try something a little bit out of the ordinary, but it's also free, and definitely something that's an all ages thing too, where maybe you're looking to get family members in it. Maybe I'm hoping too, if it could be something for first time fantasy players, that they might catch on to, okay, this is how I play fantasy football, and this, introduce people to it that way. So it's kind of wide open right now. Probably the hardcore players that are in 20 different leagues, it might take a little bit more to get them into it because they're so busy. But but hey, if they have time for one more league, we certainly want them on board.
I love it. So, in your wildest dreams, what's the goal? What's the mission for this brand?
I would say, in some ways I've already kind of exceeded my dreams, because I think the joy I've had in building it and kind of reaching out to people and stuff, it feels like it in some ways it's been successful in that regard. But what I want to go for is kind of provide a much more entertaining and a preferable alternative to the public leagues you see out there on ESPN and Yahoo and the NFL. The leagues that kind of everybody drafts and forgets about, or there's lots of ghost teams and things that stop, people stop caring about those leagues and they just want to play with their friends. I want this to be kind of a blend where people can start leagues, whether they know the people or not, and get involved in fantasy football and just kind of play off the cuff, and kind of fill that need for people that are looking for something a little extra to play. But it's all free, and it's, that's kind of what I'm looking for.
So when it comes to community, is there like a message board? Is there a place for everybody to kind of come together and share their experiences, or are you just kind of, doing things on different on social media sites? How are you approaching the growth of the community?
Yeah, good question. It's basically on social media. Definitely on Twitter. X is where I'm the most active to communicate with users, but we also have accounts on we have a subreddit as well, where I sometimes post information out there, and then there's a Discord as well. So and then we also have a Patreon too. So there's multiple ways to interact. I decided not to build like an in-game chat, like some of the apps do. Because technologically that would be a lot to develop. Plus I figured stick to the gaming and the fantasy football gaming itself, and just leave the chat to social media so people can interact that way.
Makes sense. Now, when it comes to the fantasy community, when did you discover there was this whole world out there? Obviously, again, you've been aware of fantasy for quite some time. I'm sure you consumed, just routine content from big brands. When did you realize this whole world existed?
I probably always knew it existed. probably back in the 90s too. I always, every year, I bought the Fantasy Football Pro Forecast magazine. And I know recently we lost Emil Kadlick. So, I never got to meet him, but I mean, that magazine was a huge influence on, that's how I studied for my drafts every year. And I guess the little bit I did know about the community probably came from that magazine. And also there's a website called Fantasy Insights back in the day, which kind of got me to view little things inside the community. But other than that, I never really went on social media and looked for, other people playing fantasy football up till this year. So my introduction to the community proper was creating a Twitter account on, like March or whatever this year. And so it truly is my rookie year.
That's incredible.
And I have a lot of gratitude. People have been really gracious to me and willing to talk to me, and yourself included, trying to find out more about what I'm doing. That's just been awesome.
That's great. So what was it that inspired the brand in this format? What was what's the story behind diving into the industry?
It's kind of a mix of things. Being a longtime fantasy football player, and maybe noting some things, that could be fixed or improved is one. And, I've also been a software developer. Basically, my career started when I started playing fantasy football, ironically, basically almost the same year. So, so it's kind of been that. In 2009, I also worked, I was with a web consulting company. I worked on a project called Sports Geek, which was a short-lived daily fantasy sports game. Because of the gambling laws and the financial strain, the project never really got off the ground after the first 6 months of development. But I guess also working on that kind of gave me a little bit of the confidence that with the software language that, I could, do this work and program these stats and read the APIs and do all the work. And I guess I've been thinking about this more lately too, that, I've been a developer, working for a long time now in my career. And I think this has kind of revitalized me, even in my day job, in some sense that I kind of have this one little baby to call my own and direct. And it's kind of, it just fires up the creative engine a little bit more and gets me thinking outside the box. So it's, it's been kind of rewarding in that way to have something to call my own a little bit and just, see where it goes.
I love it. So when did you decide to create this, and when did it become official?
Yeah. So it was last July. It was like right after I knew, so in June and July, I knew I wanted to do something, whether it was writing or, building some sort of a game. It kind of had this itch. And then after July 4th last year, I kind of hatched this idea and then started looking into it and seeing if it was going to be doable. And I would say by the end of July, I was full on into development of it, starting to work on it, and been at it ever since.
That's awesome. So what's been the most difficult challenge thus far in this whole process?
I would say there's been some of the programming has been difficult, particularly the draft stuff. That is probably the most challenging to program and get things working, and will continue to be one of the more challenging pieces of it. The rest of it I haven't found so bad. I'd say the most challenging is just trying to get people involved in the game, and kind of everybody's really busy in the industry and has a lot of demands on them. So it's just trying to get people's attention and kind of I've kind of learned that maybe I can't throw too much at people at once. I kind of have to give them little parcels of information and bring them in a little bit at a time, and until they get what I'm doing. And I think part of that too is it takes time to build up your reputation in the community, and prove to people that you're around for the long haul. You're looking to see this through and see where it goes.
So what's been the most rewarding part of this journey so far?
I would say just the being able to flex this creative muscle and build it and kind of bring it to fruition. And kind of that culminated with the expo too, just kind of going out there and kind of seeing the other creators, like the Sam Sports and Loser Ball Generations, and there's a few others I'm forgetting. Extreme Fantasy Football. There's that was kind of an eye opener. That I was at first I thought, I'm kind of way out on the limb. What am I doing here? but seeing these other people that have creative, fantasy gaming centered ideas has been really cool and inspiring.
That's awesome. Yeah, you mentioned the expo at the top. You obviously just mentioned it as well. When did you first hear about the expo? When did you first start thinking about, maybe I'll check that out?
Yeah, it was like late March or April where I created my Twitter account, and I'm like, and then once I got Twitter set up, and I started seeing things about the Fantasy Football Expo, and I was like, and then I started reading about it, and I was like, wow, I just felt this great urge to go to it, and get a booth and kind of promote my product and see how it went, because it seemed like, because it's focused on fantasy football, it seems like a great starting point. And then maybe over time I can visit the FSGA conferences and things, because I feel like I want to make sure that I have a really good, solid product before I go to that one and that type of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was going to say, with the expo though, how would you describe that experience for you? Was it everything you wanted it to be, just in regards to, the opportunities that it presented?
Yeah, it was awesome. It's probably, there's like two sides of the coin, because I loved having my own booth and kind of having people come and explain the product and all that. It was a fantastic experience. And of course, meeting everybody live and in the flesh and kind of building some new relationships out of the expo was amazing too. The one thing that I observed though was it's kind of like it kind of sucked a little bit that I was missing out on some of the Kings and Queens draft action, and I actually didn't roll into late Friday night, so I missed out on like the cornhole tournament stuff. So I wish I could have gotten into that, but yeah, in some ways, the thing that disappointed me was that I didn't get time like yourself to probably go and visit all 50 booths. So it's like maybe one of these years I'll go as a visitor so I can mingle with everybody in true form.
Yeah. I think for everybody, it's a little different. I did a booth, I think initially the first year. It was good. I had a couple friends with me that kind of helped man that booth. So I was, free to move around. And these last couple of years, I've definitely chosen that path. But it's different for everybody. If you have a product like yours, it makes sense to have a place where you're hunkered down. But the one thing with the expo is you can't, there's always going to be some regrets, because you want to consume every minute of it. You want to experience every moment of it, and it's not practical. So that's why there's always next year, right? So come up, you have your experience, you kind of learn what you like. Next year, come back and maybe do a little differently and see how it goes. But I think each year people go back to the expo, it becomes more of a reunion, of friends, and it's like a family reunion where each year, you're more connected with people and you can build on this relationship. So I definitely hope to see you back at the expo. You mentioned FSGA. I think that you would really enjoy that experience. Like you said, meeting like Loser Ball and, mentioning a few other brands that you mentioned with people you met at the expo. FSGA is very much like that when it comes to just hearing about, because they have their pitch competitions, right? Where they, they have new brands that kind of, just like yours. I mean, your brand, Surf Football, this company, this entity, is exactly what you see at FSGA during those pitch competitions. It's unique, twists on fantasy or sports betting or different formats, different games, different companies bringing something new and fresh to fantasy, and that's exactly what Surf Football does. So it's awesome. I think the FSGA would be great, but it does make sense to be thoughtful about when you get into that, because you want to be ready, right? And it's not inexpensive, so it's one of those things you definitely want to be ready, before you go. But it doesn't hurt to even to join, attend, see what it's like before you even decide to do a pitch. Maybe the next opportunity, the next conference.
Totally, yeah, makes sense.
But both are amazing. Obviously, the expo is incredible. So definitely hope to see you back at the expo. Can't wait to learn more about this game. I'm going to dive in more as well. That's the tricky part is time, right? Figuring out how to spend your time. But I love the unique things that you're bringing to fantasy, and a resource like this. There's a lot of people out there that would probably really enjoy it, especially if you're coming from a background where you do more gaming and stuff outside of sports. There's obviously unique twists that I think people can definitely appreciate with what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything else before we close things out that you want to share before we end things here today?
Yeah, a few things. Just to let you know what I'm up to lately as the NFL season is going on. Obviously the site is up and running, and I'm making sure things going cool with the stats flowing in and out and people's teams and such. But I'm actually going through somewhat of a web redesign right now, where I'm going to make Surf Football. Right now it's playable just on desktop. I'm going to expand that up so you can play on a browser from any device, whether it's your phone or a tablet or your laptop, whatever. And that's my goal, is I want to redesign it so people can play on there from everywhere. Because like my daughters are saying, well, I'll check on my team, but I have to wait till I get home from work or whatever. Whereas, they want to play on their phone. So definitely that's a big goal I'm working on. And the web redesign probably won't be out until later this year, and then probably going into next year, because it takes some time for me to test out. And like I said earlier, that I'm kind of kicking around the idea of maybe having one game to center my efforts around for next year. You'll still have the other games out there. I'm not going to get rid of those, but I just want to market one of the games as like the flagship, to kind of lead the way. So that's kind of what is going on in my world lately with the product.
That's awesome. Exciting stuff, Mike. Now, obviously, fantasy sports have evolved a ton, over the years, and interesting spin-offs like Surf Football are always exciting to discover. So definitely recommend people checking it out. Can you share with the listeners and viewers where to find you?
Yeah. Everything is at surffootball.com. And also a good source of information is the Twitter X account, which is @PlaySurfFootball.
There we go. Well, thanks again for coming on. Look forward to seeing what's next for you in 2024 and beyond.
Thanks. Appreciate it. I appreciate your help and time. It's been great.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.